Okay, this demonstration is going to show us how to assemble princess seams. As you can see, I actually have 3 pieces here. This is one of my pattern pieces. It was cut on the fold so that when I open it up, it's doubled, but there's not going to be a seam in the center here. And then I have 2 side pieces that are then cut double layered, not on the fold. One will go here on the right side of the princess seam, and another will go on the left side. So we have our center panel and then our 2 side panels. And I want to point out on each of these pattern pieces there were notch markings, and what you should do is you should just snip into those. Our seam allowances are 5/8, so you want to do about a 1/4 inch snip on both your centerpiece panel, and then you're going to have little snip marks on both of your side princess seam panels. The first step that we need to do is we need to do a row of some reinforcing stitches along this curve. This is our armhole curve right here, and this is our princess seam curve. So we're going to do some reinforcing stitches along the edge of our princess seam curve to probably be about 1 inch. It's not going to hurt anything if you go a little bit longer, but 1 inch below that lower notch. Since again our seam allowance is at 5/8 inch, I'm going to do some reinforcing stitches at a 1/2 inch or 4/8, depending on what your markings are on your machine. And I'm going to back stitch at both the top and the bottom, and these are going to stay in here, so you don't have to worry about taking these out. So I'm going to do some back stitching at the front end, and I'm going to go slow around that corner because this is a curved seam, and we want to make sure that we're staying along that 4/8 inch marking, which it's difficult at times. So just go slow. We're not in a rush. And now I'm approaching my notch area, so I'm going to continue past my notch area and do some back stitching. I probably went about 1 inch to 1.5 inches past that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those out and then clip my thread tails close to the end. Clip those, and then I need to repeat this step on the other side. So I've done 1 step right now, and then I'm going to flip this over and do my reinforcing stitches again at 4/8 inch or 1/2 inch from the edge of the fabric. And again, as I'm getting close to that curve, it's a little bit tight of a curve, I'm going to slow down as I need and just manipulate my fabric as best I can, and as long as I don't go over that 5/8 inch mark, shouldn't be too big a deal. So I just passed my lower notch. I'm going to do some back stitching and stop there and trim my thread tails. Oops. Alright. Then what we need to do is we need to line up these notches. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to do one side of your sample, but you'll want to repeat this and do this on both sides of your seam allowance here. So what we need to do is we first need to make sure that we select the right piece. So I have my center piece here, and when I'm done, I want there to be a left connection as well as a right. So when I'm done, this is what it's going to look like. So I need to flip it over and put right sides together. Now what I'm going to do is you need to match up those notch markings. So go ahead and match those up. That's going to be your first step, and then pin them in place. And I'm going to match up my bottom notch area as well. And you're going to probably have to, manipulate your fabric a little bit, and you're going to pull it and kind of stretch it around as you need. And what you can do before you get going, I guess I should have done this the first time, so I'm going to go ahead and take out my pins, but then use your snips, and along this curve, especially right in between those notches, you're going to come back and you're going to snip, and you want to snip in to allow this fabric to expand to fit that curve. You're going to snip in until about 1/8 of an inch away from that reinforcing stitch line that you just did. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to stitch about at 1/4 inch intervals into the fabric, but not cutting through that reinforcing stitch line between my notches. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do this one too. Didn't mean to get ahead of the curve there, but this is a step that we're going to want to do because it'll help us in the long run. Go ahead and keep on snipping. One more. Alright, so I snipped again just right in between those notch areas. Now I'm going to go back, make sure I have my right piece on the right side, and go ahead and flip that over. Then I'm going to line up my outermost notches because I didn't snip past those, and you want to make sure that you don't snip past them because then you won't know which is a notch and which one is your snip. So, so I'm going to go ahead and now repin that. And hopefully this will lay a little bit better for me than what it did before. I'm sure it will. See how like by snipping that it really opened it up, and then I can pin along there a lot easier. It allowed me to spread that fabric open. I'm going to pin again just right there along that curve edge, and I want to make sure I don't have any bubbles on the back side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue just manipulating this fabric so that my seam edges are lined up perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and put in quite a few pins here, just because for me, I prefer to have a couple more pins when I'm doing these curve seams because you want to make sure that they're lined up just as they need to be. So, you know, if you don't feel like you need to have as many pins as me, that's completely fine. I'd rather have more than I need and I can take out later. And then I'm just going to continue matching up these side seams as I go down towards the waistline area of this bodice piece. And then I'm going to pin, then I'm going to go back up and pin this top area. Now what you'll find when you're pinning this is that your side bodice piece is actually going to stick out the top, and that's just because of the seam allowance, and you can trim that after the fact. So just match it up as it naturally fits. It's probably going to extend a 1/2 inch to 5/8 inch past the very edge there, which is what mine does, is it extends past. But once we go ahead and you know, seam these two pieces together and then flip it back and press it, then we can go ahead and trim that. So, alright, I have these things pinned into place, and with the panel side on top, that's the side panel side on top, I'm going to go in and, you know, just make sure that this is really, there's no bubbles on the back side that could accidentally catch. All of my fabric is laying flat. And then once I'm happy with how everything's looking, I'm going to take a hand needle and thread, and I'm going to baste this into place. So I already have a needle prepped. I'm just going to use 1 layer thick. We will remove these in the end. So if you want to, you know, you can do double up. It's whatever you feel comfortable doing. So I'm going to go in and you know, we're at our 1/2 inch markings on our reinforcing stitches, so I'm going to kind of use that as a guideline, and I'm going to go just right on the inside, so I guess just a little bit farther inward, so right below that that stitching, that reinforcing stitching. So I'm going to go ahead and just baste that into place. It doesn't need to be perfect because, like I said, we're going to take this out, but you really want to make sure that your fabric is not going to be bunching on the back side. So flip it over often, make sure that it's in a good place, and again, these are basting stitches, which is our long stitch. And we're just going to go all the way up and down this real quick. And I know that it might seem a little tedious, but taking this time will ensure that our seam is going to lay flat just as we need. Alright, I'm about at my halfway point, so just bear with me a little bit longer, and hopefully you're doing this right along with me. So we can complete this seam together. And you know, by hand basting over machine basting, what you're doing is, you know, you're able to control where your fabric is laying on both of these layers. And because we have, you know, this curved seam, it is more difficult to manipulate. So, you know, take some time to save some time in the long run. That's what I say. So, whoops. Got it caught on some of my pins. And then as I approach the end here, I'm just gonna do a quick little knot so it won't move. Alright. Now because I did this seam, then I'm gonna go ahead and trim that, and so my thread isn't gonna be getting in the way. So we have this in place. And everything's looking pretty good. Now what we can now do is remove those pins because it is connected just as it's supposed to be. Alright, remove all those pins, and then we're going to go back to our machine, do some machine sewing. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew with the clip side up, so that the center panel piece, we're going to make sure that that is on the top side when we go to sew. And we want to make sure, just be very cautious and careful and stop as you need to make sure that that underside is smooth. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and place this under. Again, we're sewing at the 5/8 inch seam allowance. And that's going to, we also are going to be able to see those reinforcing stitches. Which is at 1/2 inch, so we should be sewing on the inside of that stitch by about 1/8 inch. Oops. Okay. All right. And I have my machine set on 2.5, and I'm just going to make sure that I'm going to go slow, make sure that my seam is very flat as I'm going through this. Alright. Again, I might need to just manipulate my fabric as I go. See how slow I'm going? We do not want to rush this step. Alright, slow and steady. Stopping when you need. When you stop, if for any reason you need to raise that presser foot, make sure that your needle is in the down position. Alright, seam allowances are looking pretty good. 5/8 right in along the right edge. I'm kind of stitching over some of my basting stitches right now, but that's okay. They're in there in a way that they're so far apart, it shouldn't be a problem when it comes to taking those out. Alright, so now I'm on the home stretch. Got a semi-straight line here. Woo! I'm excited. Alright, getting close to the end there, and then I'm going to back stitch a little bit. Alright, raise that needle and presser foot up and go ahead and trim that seam. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're then going to go ahead and we're going to now remove our basting stitches. So I'm going to go back, and I like to clip my first one out, and then I'm going to remove that knot because I just didn't want it moving around while I was seeing. So I went in and clipped, and then I'm going to take my scissors or my seam ripper and just gently pull those hand basting stitches that I put in out. Maybe I'm jumping the gun there. Yep, there was another one. Okay. And that one broke on me, so I'm going to go in and pull it out to the right. So just gently remove those basting stitches along the way, and hopefully your stitch line will be about 1/8 inch away from that reinforcing stitch line. And if while you're removing these basting stitches, if it gives you any difficulty because you created that seam and stitched over your basting stitch, just cut it and pull it out from the other direction. You don't want to accidentally just tear up any part of your fabric for any reason. Okay, so I have my basting stitches removed, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to gently finger press this seam open. So by finger press, you open that seam up and you kind of use your fingernail a little bit and you press it open. All right. Now we're going to do this step first so that we can do some notching, taking some wedges out of the fabric instead of doing a formal press on this and then doing that, because we want to make sure that this is going to lay as best as it can before we go and hit the ironing board for some final pressing. Alright, so I have this finger pressed open, kind of. Mine doesn't want to stay in place as best as it could, so I'm trying to use my fingernail a little bit more, just finger press it open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back in, make sure you only cut through one layer here of the seam allowance, don't accidentally grab your fabric, and I'm going to cut out some notches. And I'm going to probably cut these notches. The notches are little triangles that you're cutting out of this fabric. And what this is doing is it's allowing the fabric, so when it hits that curve, it's going to allow it to have a place to go, because that's we're joining that kind of inward seam to an outward seam with a curve. So, you know, the other day in class we did inward to outward with a corner, but this is an inward to an outward with a curved seam. So on one side you want to clip where the fabric needs to expand and open up, and you want to notch where there's excess fabric in it and it kind of needs a place to fold into itself and go. So I notched out these little triangles all along the inward, or like the outward curve here on the side panel piece, so that when I go to flip it and it curves back on itself, the other triangles that are left here can close back on itself here. So so we have clipping on the center panel and notching on the side panel here of the princess seam. Now I'm not going to demonstrate this, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to press. So next you're going to go over to the ironing board, and using the pressing ham, you're going to place the large piece, the center panel, on top, place this over the pressing ham, and press this seam just as it is. And then you're going to open it up and use that pressing ham to really open up this curve. So when you're done, this seam will be open. Alright, and that's the demonstration for the princess seam. Off camera, I'm going to go ahead and finish the other side just so it's done, and you're going to want to do that too. So make sure that you have both princess seams done, and it should look pretty sharp when you're done. Alright.